On the wedding day, the groom's relatives wanted to stage those rowdy wedding pranks. I tried my best to stop them, but my husband slapped me in the face. He shouted angrily, "Why are you spoiling the fun on such a happy day?" Later, he said that he really loved me. I sneered coldly, "But I'm really disgusted with you. My name is Joanna, and I'm 25 years old." After graduation, I went back to my hometown and started working in a bank. Both my salary and my working hours are quite stable. One day, my colleague Sister Wang came over to me joyfully and whispered, "Sister Joanna, I have a distant younger brother. He saw the photos of our gathering the other day and took a liking to you. He just wants to make friends with you first." What this "making friends" meant was self-evident. It's like this in our third-tier cities. Generally, there are fewer marriages based on free love, and more people get married through blind dates arranged by matchmakers. I was just about to refuse when Sister Wang, with her somewhat chubby hands, grabbed me. "Don't be in a hurry. You don't have a boyfriend either. You're not young anymore, and actually, it's time for you to get married." I felt a bit embarrassed. "Sister Wang, actually, I have a boyfriend, and we're about to get married soon. I took a leave 2 days ago to take our wedding photos." The reasons why I didn't let them know that I had a boyfriend were as follows. First, he didn't work as a civil servant or in a similar job. His salary was unstable, and it was easy for them to gossip about him. Second, I was afraid that if we broke up someday, they would still gossip about me. So I simply treated them as colleagues and never talked about my personal affairs. I casually put some wedding candies in Sister Wang's hands. "Sister Wang, remember to come to our wedding then." Sister Wang narrowed her sharp eyes and looked at the words on the invitation card. She smiled ambiguously. "Oh, your boyfriend is so handsome." "My boyfriend's name is Chandler. He was quite good looking when he was in college. Otherwise, I wouldn't have fallen for him. However, he's had a lot of social engagements in recent years, so he's got a beer belly now." I replied vaguely, "Well, he's okay. Just so." But she still held me and asked, "Is his hometown City A?" City A is a small county next to our hometown. Chandler and I met at a gathering of fellow townspeople. "Yes. It's written on the invitation card." Sister Wang's voice suddenly dropped, and she whispered, "Then, do you want to find some prostitutes to be your bridesmaids?" I frowned as soon as I heard that. How could she encourage me to do such a thing? I have girlfriends. They'll be my bridesmaids. We've already arranged all these things. Then I turned around and left. It was only later that I realized Sister Wang had her reasons for asking that question, and it was this wedding that made me realize what a scumbag Chandler was. On the wedding day, my 3 bridesmaids were helping me with my makeup beside me. All 3 of them were my high school classmates and were really beautiful. Mia said with a smile, "Hide the wedding shoes quickly. Don't let Chandler find them." She was the gentlest among us. However, she was also unusually lively on my wedding day. Sharon and Yvonne were the same. They quickly started to take action. When Chandler came to pick me up, the bridesmaids blocked the door, and Chandler stuffed red envelopes in one after another. Everything was going smoothly. It was indeed a joyous day until I was sent to the bridal chamber. Mia and the others were called out. They said that according to the custom in City A, the bride should wait for the groom in the bridal chamber while all outsiders should leave. While I was resting with my eyes closed, suddenly several shrill screams and the laughter of a group of men came from outside the door. Sensing that something was wrong, I was about to go out and check. At the end of the corridor, a door was open, and several young men were blocking the doorway. "Don't touch me." But soon her voice was drowned out by several evil laughs. It was Mia's voice. I quickly took off my elaborate embroidered shoes and ran over. That was the most unforgettable and humiliating scene in my life. At that time, my blood rushed to my head, and I was trembling with anger. Mia was pinned down by several men, constantly being taken advantage of. Her light pink bridesmaid dress was torn to shreds. The man pressing on her shoulders was someone I knew. He was Troy, the team leader of Chandler's, and they usually had a good relationship. At this moment, he was pouring a bottle of yogurt into Mia's throat, making disgusting laughs. "Drink. Drink it for me." This woman is so tough. She can still swallow it like this. Beautiful. 666. Everyone around was watching the show. I rushed in, but many people tried to stop me. I went crazy with anger. Get lost. All of you, get the hell out of here. The crowd fell silent. I casually picked up the vase beside me and smashed it directly onto Troy's head. Blood flowed down. I wrapped Mia with the sheet beside me. Tears welled up in my eyes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Mia's face was covered with tears and the marks of the humiliation just now. She had red marks on her hands. She grabbed me. Yvonne and the others were taken away. I took a deep breath. I picked up the fruit knife on the table and said, let's go. I received a good education and grew up in a simple family environment. So I had never thought that people could be so inhumane, like pythons full of animal desires. When Mia and I rushed to the downstairs bedroom, I realized that people could be so shameless. Yvonne and Sharon had already been pinned to the ground. There was milky white yogurt everywhere, splashed randomly on their bodies and the floor around them. Yvonne struggled to get up with her clothes in disarray. I had never seen her lose her composure like this before. She had always been the toughest among us. Usually, we even called her a tough girl. However, no matter how strong she was, she couldn't break free from the control of over a dozen adult men. There was a man in his 40s lying on Sharon's body, with his hands moving. She had already cried until she had no voice left. Yvonne's face was full of tears, and she shouted crazily, "Get away! Go away!" Even though she was shouting at the top of her lungs, she still firmly pushed away the man lying on Sharon, hugged Sharon, and protected her who was crying bitterly. They kept crying, but the men around took out tape. Tape their mouths shut. Oh, no. It sounds better when they're crying. Ha ha ha. Everyone burst out laughing. Several men even undid the belts on their fat waists. There were many people standing in the bedroom, but I saw the last person I wanted to see, Chandler. He was standing aside with a gloating smile, his eyes narrowed as if he was discussing the miserable situation of Yvonne and the others with the people around him. Even though he was wearing a neat suit and had a formal hairstyle, his sleazy and disgusting look hit me right in the heart. I retched for a few seconds. It was so disgusting. It was really disgusting. I didn't even know how I got in there. It seemed that I was waving the fruit knife and made those men make way for me bit by bit. Get away. All of you get away. If you come any closer, you'll be responsible for the consequences. I screamed, the tears in my eyes couldn't be held back anymore and dropped down one by one. I finally understood why Sister Wang had asked me that question. In a panic, I seemed to have stabbed someone's arm. That person wanted to rush up to hit me but was stopped by others. I looked at him coldly, just try it if you dare. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw that Mia had already helped Yvonne and Sharon up. Seeing that the situation was not right, the people around started to persuade us to make peace. Sister-in-law. Don't be too extreme. The livelier the fun, the better. Besides, we didn't do anything to your bridesmaids. Why are you using knives and weapons? One person started, and then the voices in the crowd would completely overwhelm you. Yes, sister-in-law. You're really going too far. You've even made someone bleed. They can sue you for intentional injury. Yes, yes. Originally, everyone was having a great time. But now because of you, they all talked at once until they mentioned my husband Chandler. Chandler, say something. They started to echo again. The looks on these people's faces were really disgusting. Chandler and I had been together since college. I thought I could trust his character. So I still had a glimmer of hope in my heart, hoping that he would be reasonable and stop this outrageous wedding prank with me. But at that time, I didn't think that if his buddies were such jerks, how good could he be? Chandler walked over with a gloomy face, stopped in front of me, and then slapped me. He roared angrily, "Why the hell are you making trouble on such a happy day? Can't you just let the brothers have some fun?" With a loud slap, the noisy environment suddenly became quiet. I was slapped to one side, and the beads on my headdress swung onto my face with my movement. The force was so heavy that my physiological tears came out immediately. I didn't know who cheered. A few people in the crowd murmured. Chandler is so awesome. That's how you can control your wife. I've always said that your wife has a bad temper. It was outrageous, really fucking outrageous. I pushed the tip of my tongue against my injured left cheek, then calmly turned around and said, cover up a bit. Follow me later. Then I took off the headdress on my head and threw it at Chandler's chest, slapped him back, and stuffed the unfinished yogurt into his mouth as hard as I could, looking at the bloodstains on his face caused by my excessive force. I pointed at his nose and cursed. I'm telling you, Chandler. This wedding is off. You go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow and get a divorce. Also, if anyone dares to stop me from walking out, I do have classmates, friends or relatives working in the police station. Just try it if you dare. Chandler was stunned. Sometimes, raising your voice can intimidate others. Taking advantage of their fear, I took Mia and the others and walked out. As soon as I got out, I went to the street to find a car. I threatened a groomsman to give me the keys. He gave them to me. I let the three of them squeeze into the back seat. When I opened the driver's seat, Chandler was running over to stop me, with a large group of his buddies behind him. Several of them who ran fast blocked in front of the car. I didn't care and just stepped on the accelerator and rushed out. I didn't believe that these guys who only bullied women really had that much courage. Sure enough, they were sensible enough to run away. I wiped the remaining tears on my face twice. Sharon and Mia were still crying. Looking through the front mirror, I could clearly see some wounds on their bodies. Yvonne had calmed down and asked me, "Where are we going now?" I held the steering wheel, trembling with anger, and my voice became gloomy. The police station. Taking advantage of the vulgar wedding pranks to do immoral things. Were these people so fearless because they had something to rely on, or were they just stupid? I won't be called Joanna if I don't make them pay the price. I drove directly back to my hometown county. The custom of rowdy wedding pranks in City A must have existed for a long time. I'm worried that if I directly go to the local public security bureau, they might not accept the case. After all, in their eyes, they might be used to such things and think nothing of it. However, I'm quite clear that there's no such custom of rowdy wedding pranks in my hometown. At most, we just make it a bit difficult for the groom to pick up the bride. There's definitely no such thing as taking advantage of wedding pranks to act like hooligans. So from the very beginning, I didn't ask Chandler whether there was such a custom of rowdy wedding pranks in his place. I was so angry that I hit the steering wheel. The feeling of powerlessness at that time still lingered in my heart. If I hadn't gone out at that time and something had happened to Mia and the others, I definitely wouldn't have forgiven myself. It was quiet in the car. Sharon and Mia had already fallen asleep, but they didn't sleep soundly. Chandler kept calling me. I directly rejected his calls. In the end, I was so annoyed that I simply turned off my phone. Yvonne stared at me fixedly. "Joanna, are you sure you want to get divorced?" I paused for a moment. Chandler and I had been in a relationship for 3 or 4 years. Although we broke up once because of differences in our values, we got back together later. To be honest, getting married is different from being in a relationship. For me, it doesn't matter who I marry. I just wanted to fulfill my parents' expectations. After we broke up, my mother was so anxious that she started looking for blind date candidates for me, but I didn't meet anyone suitable. Then Chandler came to beg for us to get back together. So I simply thought it would be better to choose someone with an emotional foundation. Although Chandler has quite a few minor flaws, he's also quite ambitious. But at this moment, my eyes were firm. Yes, I want a divorce. It was already late, and the police station was rather deserted. I took them in to report the case. The police looked at us, a bit surprised. After all, I was still wearing an elaborate Shoha-style wedding dress, and Yvonne and the others were wearing light pink bridesmaid dresses. What's going on here? All my personal belongings were with them and put in the bags. I took out my ID card. I want to report a case. Someone molested 3 of my friends and attempted rape. As soon as I finished speaking, the police station became busy. The 3 of them were taken away for questioning and evidence collection. I sat on a chair beside them, rubbed my temples. The sudden changes today happened too quickly and completely exceeded my tolerance. I had never experienced such harm since I was a child, and today's harm actually came from my soon-to-be ex-husband's friends and relatives. It was really ridiculous. The Shoha-style wedding dress on me was so heavy that it made me feel suffocated. I stood up. The shops outside hadn't closed yet. I was going to buy some clothes and also buy a few pieces for Mia and the others. Not to mention that their clothes were already torn and wearing them would remind them of those bad things. There were few pedestrians on the street. Finally, I couldn't help sitting beside the flower bed and crying. I had been holding on in front of them before and now I could finally relax. At that time they encountered so many acts of harassment. How terrified and scared they must have been in their hearts. And all of this was due to my carelessness. If I had known earlier that there was such a vulgar custom of rowdy wedding pranks in Chandler's hometown, could I have stopped such behavior and saved them from this humiliation? After calming down, I walked into the shop, bought 4 sets of clothes, and also bought a bottle of makeup remover. By the way, when I was paying, I turned on my phone that had been silent for a long time. I saw hundreds of missed calls, most of which were from Chandler, as well as from Chandler's parents, my parents, and relatives and friends. I clenched my phone tightly. Chandler's call came in again. This time, I answered it. Chandler's voice was both surprised and happy. "Joanna, you've finally answered the phone. I know I'm wrong. Where are you? I'll drive to pick you up now." I said coldly, "What exactly is your mistake?" He was stunned for a moment and then said in a flattering tone, "I shouldn't have hit you at that time. But you know, I'm a man. Men care about their face. You didn't give me any face there. I got angry and hit you on impulse. I really know I'm wrong now." I was really angry and amused at the same time. "So you think that I was not giving you face when I was protecting my friends and stopping that damn rowdy wedding prank? You really have a big ego. You use the way of hitting a woman to save your face. You must have been secretly overjoyed when they said you could control your wife." At this moment, I really wanted to tear off this beast's disguise. He had always played the role of being gentle and private. He also seemed gentle in front of outsiders. But now, I really couldn't accept his behavior. There was already a sense of tiredness in my voice. "All right, stop talking, Chandler. Let's just break up. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock, we'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get divorced." As soon as he heard this, he started to argue back and there was no sign of his previous attitude of admitting mistakes. "Joanna, I'm giving you face, and you should accept it. Where are you now? If you come back today, we can still be okay. Besides, they were just having fun during the wedding prank. They didn't do anything to you. Why are you making such a big deal out of it?" I didn't want to waste my words on this kind of person and directly hung up the phone. Then I called my father. They must be quite worried now. As soon as the call was connected, my father asked me with concern, "Joanna, where are you now? Chandler has come to our house to look for you, and your uncles have also come. They all knew about my running away from the wedding today and there would definitely be a lot of questions. Dad, I'm planning to divorce Chandler. You should already know what happened today. I won't go into details. Anyway, his attitude is not clear, and I don't want to be with this kind of person anymore. I'll tell you the details when I get back. Let my uncles go home. Don't worry about me. I'm fine." We talked a few more words, and my parents seemed to want to say something but held back. In our small county town, if a divorced woman gets married again, she will inevitably be called "entering the cage for the second time," a local dialect referring to a remarried woman. So they must be thinking about my reputation and don't want me to get divorced. But I had already made up my mind and there was nothing more to say. When I hung up the phone, I remembered someone who must be very important. I took care of all the wedding arrangements by myself at that time. Chandler was working on a project at that time. So the wedding photographer added me on WeChat. I looked at his WeChat nickname. There was a string of phone numbers after "wedding photography." I directly dialed the number. "Hello? Joanna?" I hummed in response. "Mr. Lin, I saw you at the rowdy wedding prank today. You should know my best friends Yvonne and Sharon. I saw you filming them at that time. Could you give me the video? Actually, it's not appropriate for us to give you this kind of private video. We're going to report it to the police. The police will come to you then. If you give it to me now, it can save you a lot of trouble. What do you think? There was silence on the other end for a while. Joanna, actually, this is the custom in City A. There's nothing much to investigate. I said firmly, give me the video. I don't care whether this is a custom or not. Those who make mistakes should kneel down and admit it. Among the three of them, Sharon was the one who was violated the most seriously. There were fingerprints of several people on her personal clothes. Her face was still pale and bloodless. Do you know? I always remember one face. He had yellow teeth and smelled of cigarettes. He kept touching me and laughing. But I was really scared, Sharon said blankly, staring into space. I clenched my fists. I probably knew who that person was. It was the one I saw unbuckling his belt. His name is Jason. He's a relative of Chandler's, doing steel business, in his 40s, and has a son and a daughter at home. It's really disgusting. He has a daughter himself. How could he do such things to other people's daughters? I had already handed over the video given by the photographer to the police. As we all know, videos can't be photoshopped. The harm suffered by Sharon and Yvonne looked even more tragic in the video. They tried hard to stop them, but they couldn't awaken the conscience of these devils. Several female police officers frowned when they saw it. The next thing was to go after these beasts. I gave all the clothes in my hand to Yvonne and the other two to change into. All their clothes had to be left at the police station for evidence collection. We were busy with all these things until 12 o'clock. I told the police the addresses of Jason's and Chandler's homes. They immediately dispatched the police. Quite a few people were involved. A female police officer told us that we could go home first and they would contact us when they caught the people. After leaving the police station, I took them back to the house I rented before. I rented it beside the bank for convenience. In the middle, I received another call from Chandler. Joanna, don't be angry anymore. I went to your parents' house to look for you and found that you still hadn't gone back. Where are you now? He started his hypocrisy again. I was tired of dealing with him. There's no need for you to pretend anymore. We're definitely getting divorced. I'll return the 88,000 yuan betrothal gift and your things to you then. Similarly, you also have to return my dowry and the things I bought for you to me. We'll return them face to face tomorrow. When are you free? Let's meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Chandler said in a deep voice, I won't divorce you. I was wrong about this time. I promise that such a thing will never happen again. Don't be angry anymore. I directly hung up the phone. He was like a piece of sticky plaster that couldn't be shaken off. Now there's a 1-month cooling off period for divorce. I really regret getting the marriage certificate in advance. Sharon went to take a shower. The whole room fell into silence after I ended the call. I asked, do you want a drink? We talked a lot that night. I kept apologizing to them. My self-blame and helplessness were completely exposed after drinking. Even though we were best friends, I was also responsible for today's tragic situation. They cried and hugged me. We're sorry for ruining your wedding. How could they be sorry for me? They were the ones who had suffered great grievances. Sometimes these girls shouldn't be so kind. The ones who were harassed during the rowdy wedding prank were the bridesmaids. If I, the bride, hadn't stepped in, the whole thing would definitely have developed in a more serious direction. After they fell asleep, I sent a WeChat message to Sister Wang, asking her to tell my leader that I would go to work as usual tomorrow afternoon. Today's events had messed up my mind. I needed to work quickly to clear my mind. Chandler definitely wouldn't go to get divorced tomorrow. This kind of thing needs to be planned carefully. As for my parents, maybe it's hard to change their minds for a while, but I think they'll understand in the end. However, I didn't expect that someone would come to trouble me when I was at the bank. I hadn't even entered the bank yet when I saw several middle-aged women standing at the entrance of the bank, not going inside. When they saw me, their eyes were filled with hatred. Sister, is that her? I frowned, feeling a bit confused for a moment. Those women came straight over, cursing. Ah. I cried out in pain. They surrounded me, and some of them directly grabbed my hair. There were a lot of people around, but none of them dared to step forward. Are you crazy? Let go of me. I beat her to death. A woman who was fairly well dressed, with dyed yellowish brown hair, slapped me in the face with red eyes at that moment. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, could my husband have been arrested? What will happen to our child when he applies for a civil servant job after graduation? Ah? What should we do? She was hysterical, as if she had suffered a great injustice. My scalp was pulled, and I had no choice but to lean back helplessly. Their sharp nails scratched my skin. My husband and his friends were just having those rowdy wedding pranks for the good of you two as a couple. We're all women. Why can't you understand? Vixen. I should have never asked my husband to attend your wedding banquet. Now we're in such a mess. They have criminal records now. What should we do? Ah? What about our children? How can they apply for government jobs in the future? Several women kept abusing me with dirty words. There must have been red palm prints on my face already, and my clothes were being pulled and tugged by them. I finally remembered who these people were. Probably the police had already found these women's husbands through the video. So now they were seeking justice for their husbands. However, with them pulling my hair and constantly tearing at my clothes, I was powerless to resist. Finally, several security guards noticed me. I usually had a good relationship with them, so when they saw my situation, they immediately came over to separate us, though they were a bit partial. By the time they were pulled away, a lot of my hair had been pulled out by them, my face was slapped red, and my clothes were in a mess. More and more people gathered around. These people were really unreasonable. Instead of blaming their own husbands, they came to blame the victim. They were restrained by the security guards. I tried my best to calmly say to the security guards, "Brothers, please restrain them for a while. I'm going to call the police now." And those people were still cursing, and quite a few people around started recording videos. Oh, this young girl looks so decent. What did she do to deserve such a beating? What else could it be? She must have had something to do with their husbands. Yeah, that's probably the case. Hearing the whispers around and seeing the gloating smiles on people's faces, I clicked my tongue impatiently. If I didn't speak up and they posted this online, I didn't know how they would distort the truth. It was possible that they would turn this farce into a story of the legitimate wife and her accomplices beating up the mistress. I threw my bag on the ground with a bang, and it suddenly became quiet. Don't you want to see your husbands? When I send you in there too, you can meet them. Your husbands molested my bridesmaids at my wedding, tore their clothes to shreds. Don't you know what they did? And you said that I'm the reason why your sons and daughters can't apply for civil servant jobs. Why didn't your men think about your children when they were full of lust? So what do you want by beating me? Are you that ignorant? Such things can also be settled privately. But, now that you've made such a scene, if I don't let your husband stay in prison for a few days, I really can't educate your stinking minds that have been like this for over 40 years. And you beat me unilaterally. Think about whether you want to pay compensation or go to prison to accompany your husbands. The onlookers around probably understood what had happened at this time. So that's what happened. These women are really helping the evildoers. Little sister, I've already called the police for you. Those women probably still had the mindset from decades ago, putting men first. So they impulsively came to trouble me without thinking about the consequences at all. This time, their faces had lost all color. The police came soon and took us to the police station. I came back just one night later, and my mood was really complicated. Yvonne, Mia, and Sharon also came. They looked at my injuries with heartache, and then Chandler also came over. He took a look at me and his face didn't look good. Do you want me to take you to see a doctor? Chandler and I had an emotional foundation in the past few years, so his gentle tone made me feel a bit dazed for a moment. But I quickly sobered up. The fact that he hit me for the sake of face yesterday had always been a thorn in my heart. You don't have to do this. My decision won't change. I want a divorce. Once you're stuck in the mire, of course you have to get out of it quickly. Otherwise, if you're too deeply involved, no one can save you. Sure enough, his face immediately darkened. I guess he didn't have a good time there either. With me making such a fuss, he must have lost a lot of face, after all. His team leader Troy should have also been arrested. I rubbed my temples. Maybe because we worked in different places and didn't spend much time together, he had gradually changed in the business world, and I didn't really know about it. The police asked us what we wanted to do. Generally, for such conflicts, if the circumstances were not serious, it was recommended to reach a private settlement by paying compensation. I accepted the private settlement in other cases, but for the wedding prank incident that Yvonne and the others encountered, I would never compromise and would go through the judicial process. The rest of the matters were left to Yvonne and them to handle because they were the victims. Yvonne was capable of handling things, and I still needed to go to the hospital. The children of those women also came. After all, both their father and mother had been arrested. It was even more lively than during the spring festival. One of them, a boy who should still be in college, came over. Sister, what my mother did today was wrong. We've discussed it on our way here. We'll pay all your medical expenses. Can we settle this privately? These people were Chandler's relatives, and Chandler was also beside me, persuading me. Let's just forget about it. I snorted coldly. Were you involved in this? He said sheepishly, of course not. Then what does it have to do with you? Never persuade others to be kind without experiencing their pain. Although my family's financial situation was average, I hadn't suffered much since I was a child. Chandler was about the same, but I didn't know how he developed the character of being overbearing at home. The scratches left by the long nails were still aching faintly, and my anger flared up immediately. Okay, if you give me 100,000 yuan, I'll accept the settlement. These children included those who dropped out of high school and those who were still studying. I didn't want to make things difficult for them either. They went back to discuss it and agreed. After signing the settlement agreement, a little girl summoned up the courage to come over and ask me. Her eyes were red, and there were dark circles under her eyes. It was obvious that she hadn't slept well. Sister-in-law, can my father settle this privately? He's been in there for so long. Long? It hadn't even been 24 hours yet. How could that be considered long? The lingering psychological shadow in Yvonne and their hearts was what really counted as long. I stared at her steadily. I could understand her eagerness for her father not to go to prison, but, if you were the one who was involved in those rowdy wedding pranks back then, would you be praying for him to be released like you are doing now? Since I called the police about this matter, I had heard many people say that I was making a fuss over nothing, that I was being too strict, but what if it happened to themselves? Could you bear being kissed by someone a whole generation older than you with bad breath? Could you bear being locked in a room by a dozen greasy men, having your clothes torn, and the more you resisted, the more excited they became? Or could you bear having your mouth pinched, being forced to drink yogurt, and being harassed with dirty jokes? The little girl was stunned, and tears welled up in her eyes. She crouched down on the ground, her shoulders shaking constantly. Even just hearing about these things was unbearable for others, but these things happened to my good friends because of me. I couldn't even forgive myself, let alone the perpetrators. I asked for sick leave from the bank and went back to my hometown. My parents were very worried about me, and there was a bit of white hair at their temples. My father had the style of a very simple Chinese patriarch. When he saw me come back, he was still silent. I just saw him wiping his tears in the kitchen and stewing in old duck soup for me. My mother looked at me with heartache and asked me about my well-being. Eventually, the topic still came back to my divorce. Joanna, do you really want a divorce? I said firmly. Yes, there's no room for negotiation on this matter. My mother was still persuading me. Actually, when Chandler hit you that day, he came back to admit his mistake. He knelt down and kowtowed to us to apologize. Bumps and bruises are inevitable in a marriage, but Mom, Chandler didn't stop them at all in that situation and even thought that I had made him lose face. I'm really disappointed. Such a person is really not worthy of entrusting my life to. But if you get divorced, I knew what she wanted to say. If I got divorced right after getting married, I'm afraid my reputation in this county would be ruined. Sending the groom's relatives and friends to prison right after getting married, who would dare to marry such a shrew? At worst, I'll leave. I had good grades in college and can still find a job. It's just that dad's health is not good, and you'll have to take care of him in the future. When my father was young, he worked in a factory and inhaled a lot of dust, so he had been coughing all the time. In the past 2 years, it had become more and more serious. The main reason why I didn't stay in a big city back then was that I wanted to come back to fulfill my filial duty. After all, there are too many cases of children wanting to support their parents, but it's too late. I didn't want to be one of them. Finally, I convinced my parents. After dinner, I was browsing Douyin in my room. I found that a news about wedding hazing had actually made it to the hot search list. When I took a look, it was actually about me, and it had a high popularity with a lot of comments. It was posted by a news account. To be precise, it was posted by many news accounts. The title was, "While wedding hazing occurred in a certain place in City A, and the tough bride fought hard to stop it." In the video were my desperate cries and Yvonne and their weeping. The people in the video had their faces mosaicked. The caption was, "What do you think about this?" I opened the comment section. The top hot comment was, "This bride is really something." When I was a bridesmaid, I was tied to a tree and bullied by the groomsmen, and the bride didn't even come to stop it. I just don't know how this bride is doing now. There were thousands of replies below. Everyone was talking about their own tragic experiences. It turned out that wedding hazing happened in many places, and countless girls had been persecuted. I also posted a comment. I'm in the process of getting a divorce. He also slapped me, but I slapped him back. Those greasy men were also arrested. I'm waiting for the judicial process. If the circumstances are serious, they can be sentenced to 1 or 2 years in prison, but the scumbag doesn't agree to the divorce. After posting it, I took a nap. I haven't been sleeping well these 2 days. And today, I was even beaten up. What a crappy life. When I woke up, I found that there were over 99 messages in the interaction section of my Douyin. I clicked on it and saw that it was because I got a reply from a news account, so my comment was pushed to the top. The news account replied to me, "Wow. The person involved is here. I hope you'll be happy every day and won't be bothered by anything in the future." There were also many replies after that. "I envy your courage. You're really amazing. I hope wedding pranks will disappear from this world. Resist vulgar wedding pranks. Why do such wedding pranks still exist? Who on earth is conniving at them?" I read them one by one and found that most of them were warm replies and there were very few discordant voices. I took screenshots of them one by one and sent them to Yvonne and the others. After I logged out, I found that many people had sent me private messages. Most of them were girls. There were too many and I didn't want to read them one by one. However, a private message from a girl with a Pikachu as her profile picture caught my attention. Her online name was Apple. "Apple, sister, after seeing your video, I realized that there are still kind people like you in this world. You must have suffered a lot of setbacks now. I also once served as a bridesmaid at my good friend's wedding in City A. But that incident has always been a nightmare in my heart. Those sisters didn't suffer particularly serious injuries because of your protection, but I was completely bullied. That man was in his 30s, but I was still in college at that time. My life had just begun, but everyone around me blamed me, saying that I shouldn't have worn the bridesmaid dress, which attracted the attention of those people. My parents were very conservative and didn't want this incident to be made public, as it would affect my future life. They just paid tens of thousands of yuan to settle the matter. But I think such a life is meaningless." I frowned tightly and started to read the private messages one by one. "Pork porridge with preserved egg, sister, you're so brave. I was once forced to drink milk by those men, and they were all taking advantage of me. But I struggled hard at that time because I practiced Sanda. I slammed one of the men's heads against the wall. There was blood, and then they were scared, but I broke up with the bride at that time. Funny day, seeing your video really gave me a lot of comfort. I also served as a bridesmaid in City A. But the shadow of that time has always lingered. At that time, the internet wasn't developed. Several of us bridesmaids who were harassed at the wedding couldn't get over it and swore that we would never be bridesmaids again. But those bastards are still at large. As I read them one by one, my frown became even deeper. Many of these people were those who had once served as bridesmaids. They were just helping their friends as bridesmaids, but they encountered nightmares they had never had before. These private messages made me realize that this wedding prank incident not only saved my 3 best friends but also many former victims. After reading the private messages, I searched for wedding prank and found that not long ago, there was also an incident where the groomsman touched the bridesmaid's thighs, but it didn't attract much attention. At this time, Dwayne sent me another private message. The nickname of that person seemed to be a news account called Snow Fox News. I clicked on it and saw that it was an invitation from her. Snow Fox News, hello. I just saw your post on the social platform and learned that you were the bride of this wedding prank incident. Your actions are admirable. Our news agency is planning a theme against wedding pranks and sincerely invites you to accept our interview. Looking forward to your reply. I didn't have time to reply because Chandler came to my door with some people. He and his parents were carrying big and small bags and talking with my parents in the living room. Chandler's father sighed deeply. Actually, I didn't expect that things would develop to this point. There has always been the custom of wedding pranks in our place. They went a bit too far that day, but they also did it for the happiness of the young couple. I interrupted, how on earth is this vulgar custom related to my happiness? Chandler's mother said calmly, there's a saying in our place that the rowdier the pranks, the happier the newlyweds will be. I was so angry that I laughed, it's 2022 already. After all, I didn't say the harsh words that came to my mind later. After all, these people were elders. My father also spoke up, why did you come here today? The 2 elders were stunned for a moment and then pulled Chandler over, definitely mainly to make Joanna and Chandler reconcile. I said, and then? There must be more than just this purpose. And also, before his mother could finish speaking, Chandler directly knelt down in front of me and begged, Joanna, I was really wrong that day. But in these years, I've been nice to you, right? I wouldn't forget to give you gifts on holidays. Can't you forgive me just this once? My parents were a bit moved and sat aside at a loss. I knew they all wanted me to forgive him. But when I got back together with Chandler last time, it was mainly because of the pressure from my parents urging me to get married. Besides, I thought he was honest, down to earth, and hardworking. Although we didn't spend much time together at that time, he was still someone I could marry. However, our feelings had become indifferent during the long-distance relationship in these years. So this time, I was determined not to turn back. I had taken him to meet Yvonne and the others many times, so they were quite familiar with him. He could just stand by and watch when my friends were hurt. How could I believe that he was worthy of me building a family with him? I shook my head, Chandler, you don't need to say anything more. You surely know my personality. I'm rather strong-willed. But why did you slap me that day? Was it on impulse? Or did you think that since you had already married me, you could scold and beat me as you liked? You're an adult with your own judgment standards. So you must have done that action under your subjective consciousness. Now you say you're wrong. Whether you're sincere or not, don't you know it yourself? He still wanted to defend himself, but I didn't want to listen anymore. Now I've stripped away his disguised appearance and seen his bloody essence. I had been wrong about him all along. He had always been the kind of person who bullied those close to him. The slap he gave me was to establish his authority in front of everyone, showing that he could control women and that he was the head of the family, so he didn't care about my dignity at all. He also misjudged me. He thought that I must also be influenced by traditional ideas and would obey him blindly. But he didn't expect that I was also a tough nut to crack. Chandler just stood there blankly, but Chandler's mother spoke up. Then can you ask your friends to withdraw the lawsuit? Do you know that our family is having a hard time now because you sued them? The real purpose was exposed. No, I support them in safeguarding their rights. Chandler looked up and slowly stood up from the ground with gloom in his eyes. Anyway, I won't divorce. No matter what you say, if I don't agree to divorce, you can't do anything about it. What a scoundrel. I stared at him resentfully. I'll return the betrothal gifts. You can receive them yourself. For this marriage, if you don't agree to divorce, I really can't do anything. But if we continue to live separately, I don't believe the court won't rule in favor of divorce. Then let's just wait and see. He challenged me. It seems that getting a divorce won't be that easy. They left after being snubbed at my home. Since our relationship has become so strained, I don't know what will happen if we don't get divorced. I opened the private messages, originally planning to reply to the message from Snow Leopard News. After all, I privately hoped that such wedding pranks would no longer appear anywhere. But then I saw another private message. The profile picture was a girl who looked pure and innocent, and her nickname was Little Pear Sweet. What she sent was very brief. Little Pear Sweet, is the groom named Chandler? I don't know why, but this private message gave me a strong sense of fate, as if it was the key to breaking the deadlock. I quickly replied, yes. I waited nervously for her reply, feeling very uneasy in my heart. How did this person know Chandler's name? After about a minute. Little Pear Sweet, I saw that video. Only a few people whose faces could be clearly seen were mosaicked. When the camera moved, I saw that the groom was named Chandler. Can we add WeChat to chat? She sent a string of WeChat IDs. I immediately jumped to the WeChat page and added her. Little Pear Sweet quickly approved my request. Little Pear Sweet, hello, my name is Candy. You should know me, right? Sorry, I don't know. Little Pear Sweet, haha, Chandler didn't even tell you about me. What's your relationship with Chandler? I was really curious, Little Pear Sweet, I'm Chandler's ex-girlfriend. Actually, I've heard of you. Can you tell me more details? It seems that you're very impatient with him. Don't worry. I'm also very impatient with him now. Little Pear Sweet, sister, then I'm really excited to tell you. Listen carefully. Little Pear Sweet, I actually know you. Both you and I were deceived by him. He was actually quite good looking when he was in college. So he started an online relationship with me on social software. When you were in your senior year and established a relationship, right? Yes. Little Pear Sweet, at that time, I thought the photos he photoshopped were really handsome. I was only a sophomore at that time and wasn't in the same school as you, but we were in the same city. He chatted with me every day, saying good morning and good afternoon, and I fell for him. So on September 24th, I went to see him. But this idiot wanted to go to a hotel with me after watching a movie. I didn't agree at first, but he was so tough and said that if I didn't go, I didn't love him. Wait. September 24th? Then, Little Pear Sweet gave me a slap in the face with reality. Little Pear Sweet, sister, you remembered correctly. At that time, that idiot had run out of living expenses. You should still have been in the ambiguous stage with him at that time, so he borrowed 500 yuan from you. I found this when I checked his phone while he was asleep. So I immediately had a quarrel with him and then broke up. I blocked all his contact information. Because he was ambiguous with you and borrowed money from you at that time, I thought you must not know about it, so I didn't go to tell you these things. Until today when I saw your video and found that you're a person with a true temperament. This man is really a scumbag. He always sets up an honest person image for himself, but in fact, he's more cunning than anyone else. I don't know what he wants from you, but you must get a divorce. This man is no good. After chatting for a few sentences, I turned off my phone and thought about what I should do next under the moonlight. I scratched my long hair irritably. It was the anger of being betrayed and the helplessness of being completely unaware of these things that intertwined, making me almost out of breath. Although I hadn't established a relationship with Chandler at that time, I remembered our anniversary very clearly. It was on September 26th. So how dare Chandler do that? I had always adhered to the principle of respecting each other's privacy and never checked Chandler's phone. Even when we got married, I believed that he was honest and down to earth. He was really an honest person indeed. As for what he was after, I think it might be the house that my father promised to give me. Chandler's parents are farmers, and Chandler himself doesn't have much savings. Although his salary is over 10,000 yuan, it's far from enough to buy a house. My father stopped working in the factory and started doing business later. He made some money. Now that the economy is in a downturn and the business couldn't continue, but he still has some savings. He once promised at the dinner table that he would give me a house when I got married. Maybe Chandler took it to heart. So when I discussed buying a house with him, he always evaded the topic and kept painting a rosy picture for me, saying that we should wait until he saved more money to buy one, otherwise the mortgage pressure would be too high and moreover, a thieving mouse wouldn't steal just once. This kind of situation definitely isn't a rare occurrence. I went to the city where Chandler works. It's the provincial capital here, so it's a bit more prosperous compared to the place where I work. His job is to plan some large-scale events. I followed him for 3 days. During this period, things were going well for Yvonne and the others. Although from time to time someone begged them for mercy, Yvonne was tough and managed to fend them all off. Now I just need to take care of the divorce matter. There has also been some progress with Chandler. For example, he went into a hotel with a woman. The woman was heavily made up and had a great figure. I sneered. So during the days when I wasn't around, was Chandler living such a carefree life? Fortunately, I had a premarital checkup before, and it showed that there was nothing wrong with my health. 10 minutes later, I put our marriage certificate on the front desk and said with a smile, "Hello. I just received a payment record of my husband's. I'd like to know which room he's in now." After getting the room number, I called the police. "Hello? I want to report that there are people gathering for illegal transactions in XX Hotel. Chandler's parents couldn't come to the city in time. And as they are old people with inconvenient legs and feet, Chandler wouldn't let them come either. So the only option left was me. Only I could bail him out." I deliberately sat in a coffee shop for the whole afternoon. It wasn't until night fell that I walked into the police station. Chandler looked really bad. His face was pale, and stubble had grown out. It had only been one afternoon, but his hair that he had carefully groomed before now looked messy. He avoided my eyes. I tried hard to suppress the upward curl of my lips so that he wouldn't notice that I was behind this. "Joanna, bail me out," he pleaded. I laughed sarcastically. "It's really embarrassing that my newlywed husband has done such a thing. Do you want to go in and stay with your relatives?" "Please," he said anxiously. I leaned back in my chair. "Okay, but you have to divorce me." As soon as he heard this, he clenched his fists. "I don't want a divorce. I really love you." "Don't sully the word love. I've heard enough of it. You love me, so you couldn't bear the loneliness? You love me, so I was forced to become the third party in your relationship with Candy." His shoulders slumped, and he was visibly flustered. I looked at his stammering lips coldly, wondering how he would try to defend himself. "How did you know about Candy?" I raised my eyebrows. It seemed that he didn't want to pretend anymore. "She came to me not long ago." Only then did I realize that I was paying the rent for her. The female police officers around frowned at him. He was like an ordinary person on the execution platform, enduring the world's condemnation. Sure enough, he cared a lot about his face. He gritted his back teeth and looked at me with red eyes. "Okay, we'll get divorced. Now there's a 1-month cooling off period, so I want you to record a video by yourself." He flew into a rage and pounded his hands on the table. "Is it necessary? How much more do you want to humiliate me? Was it me who forced you to do such a thing?" I said calmly. "Was this outcome caused by me alone? Am I the one to blame?" His arrogance died down. "To prevent you from regretting it after I bail you out, record a video now and explain one by one the times when you betrayed me in this relationship. Don't leave anything out. If I'm not satisfied, I definitely won't bail you out." He took a deep breath to suppress the anger in his heart. I pointed the camera at him. "Go ahead. I've caused a lot of harm to Ms. Joanna." He said a lot, things that I knew and things that I didn't know. His voice was choked and stammering, which fully showed that he hadn't prepared a script in advance. It was very real. I put away my phone and sent the video to the group chat with my best friends immediately. Then I silently helped him with the bail procedures and took him to a coffee shop. After showing him the private message sent to me by Snow Leopard News, I said, "They want to interview me, and I've just accepted. Take a leave these days. I hope to see you tomorrow. Let's go get divorced." I didn't forget to threaten him. If you regret it, I'll make this video public, no matter what method I use. You value your job very much, and this job also cares a lot about the employee's image. If you don't want to become the protagonist of news that people love to talk about, cooperate with me to get divorced. He remained silent all along. I looked out of the window and slowly drank my coffee. After finishing it, I picked up my bag and stood up. I said slowly, "I'm leaving now. I've already paid for the coffee." Only then did Chandler speak. "Joanna, I really like you." I didn't feel anything in my heart. I believed that he wasn't lying to me. But, now I also really think you're disgusting. 1 month later, I took the divorce certificate and went to find Yvonne and the others. Things were developing in a good direction. Kevin and Yvonne cooked a big table of food, and Kevin's colleagues also came. The news about me was being broadcast on TV. It was a special report on the theme of rowdy wedding pranks. They teased me that I looked good on TV. I smiled and hit them playfully. On TV, my gentle voice continued. "I just hope that rowdy wedding pranks won't become an excuse for lawbreakers. Whether it's men or women, they should respect each other. Vulgar rowdy wedding pranks are no different from malicious hooliganism. And rationalizing it, ignoring the dignity and privacy of people themselves. I just hope that every flower can bloom freely. I just hope that everyone in the world can be treated kindly."